Soph, welcome. Thanks for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, cheers. How you going?
How's things been in the hub? So you're in Queensland at the moment, getting excited to play?
Yeah, it's certainly going to be the new normal, I think. You know, we're lucky to even be playing, to be honest. So I think if it means we're stuck in a hotel for 14 days before we can get a bit of normality, or saying that though, I mean, even after our 14 days here, we're still not allowed to go to restaurants, go to the supermarket, do much else. So, yeah, like at the end of the day, we can play cricket. So we've got to be thankful for that.
Yeah, that's right. And have you been managing sort of mental health and all those sorts of things? You've been coping all right?
Yeah, not going too bad. I guess I've had probably experience. I flew back from Australia to New Zealand. What was it? June or July. So I actually did the 2-week managed isolation in a hotel by myself. So
Goodness.
This is a lot nicer than that, actually having people around to interact with. And yeah, so that certainly gave me a heads up of what it's going to be like. And that was really tough. Like I definitely had a few wobblies within that 14 days. Got sick of my own company, unfortunately, which is tough to do. But yeah, look, like I say, it's going to be the new normal now. So certainly shine a light on mental health in these pretty tough times.
Yeah, that's right. And it's, as you say, the new normal. It's something you're going to have to get used to and adapt to as we go along. But to be able to play and get paid to play in the first place is probably not something you thought of when you were a little girl mucking around in the backyard. And I suppose it's one of the small things that you have to deal with to be able to do this as a profession. So if we take it back to your early days, because you've played hockey and cricket for New Zealand, where did things start for you in sport in general?
Yeah, I think Kiwi kids are very similar to Australian kids, that sport is just part of your DNA, it's part of your blood, and it's what you do. So for me, I was playing everything as a young kid. My dad's mad sports, doesn't matter what it is. He was obviously pretty big into rugby and cricket. My brother as well was into all sorts of sports, and typical little sister, I wanted to do anything that my brother did. So would often be found, being a small shadow to him, to his cricket games and whatever. But I remember, joining up to the local cricket club. I must have only been 5 or 6, I reckon. And I mean, I was really fortunate when I look back on my cricketing career, that I reckon from that first time I joined the club, Tawa Club in Wellington, I reckon I stayed with the same probably 6 or 7 boys all the way through to high school, through the grades, through all cricket. For me, obviously playing boys cricket predominantly. So I was really fortunate that they were all just like brothers to me in the end, and they didn't see any difference. Me being a girl, they knew that I could handle it. Obviously came across a few interesting situations, playing against boys that weren't used to seeing girls in the opposition, and probably less liking it when they got bowled or got pumped for 6 or whatever. So yeah, that was certainly my journey with the cricket. But I played everything under the sun. I just wanted to stay outside as long as possible. I think probably fortunate I wasn't around in the time of the technology that we're in these days, with iPhones, computers, video games, whatever it is. So but hockey and cricket were always the 2 sports that stood out for me. And I guess even not that long ago, I guess the start of my international career for both those sports, it was very much amateur. So there were no contracts, so they couldn't tie you down for pre-seasons or whatever else. So I was actually able to sort of, I guess, flip between the 2 sports.
Yeah, well, things have changed a fair bit now where that professionalism's coming in. I've had the experience of coaching people, say 10, 15 years younger than me, and they're getting really serious really quickly. And literally 11, 12-year-olds that do nothing but play cricket, no other sport, academics is out the window, and it's already getting really serious. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, it scares me massively. I'm actually on a program in New Zealand called Balance is Better, which is pretty much aimed at breaking down these myths around early specialisation and focusing too young on, representative sports for kids, rather than just letting them play. And it's something I'm really passionate about, that too often I see kids breaking down because they're focusing on one sport when they're 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, thinking that they're going to be the next Wallaby or the next, Australian women's cricket player, and they're burnt out by the time they're 19, 20, and they leave the sport because they're sick of it. So it's a real pet peeve of mine where I see kids and parents in particular forcing kids to choose one sport or specialise in a sport at such a young age. And I know for me personally, the wide range of skills that I learned from playing different sports gave me such a wide range of skill sets, and a lot of them did cross over with the hand-eye coordination, but being able to catch a ball, being able to kick a ball, strike, whether it was with a bat, a racket, it didn't matter. I think having those skills has certainly helped me when I did, I guess, choose to specialise, and that wasn't until I was, I guess, forced to in a sense, and that wasn't until I was mid-20s, early 20s. So it's a very alarming thing that's starting to happen in today's society. Is these academies are popping up, whether it's golf, football, and the kids just seem to be getting younger and younger.
Yeah, I had a chat to a ex-footballer on the last episode of the podcast, and it was alarming. So 5 or 6 year olds are getting into academies in the UK, and they're actually slamming them. So they had a nutrition checklist for a 12-year-old, I think it was an under 12-year-olds team, and the coach took them out for some ice creams after a game. They won 4-0 against Liverpool Academy or something. Ice creams on the way home. It's a 4-hour trip, and he got smashed by the club after that for going against the nutrition guidelines for 12-year-old boys. It's ludicrous.
Well, that's the thing. You sort of see now why kids are having mental health issues or body issues, and you see things like that where they're so strict. That's the thing. You've got to let kids be kids and figure it out. And I think another argument that really grinds my gears is this, we need to teach kids to win and lose, and it's part of life. Yeah, absolutely, but they've got their whole life to learn that. Let an 8-year-old just play. Let them play with their mates. I bet if you ask 100 kids, 95 of them will say, I just want to play with my mates. They don't want to say, I want to be in the Wallabies by the time I'm 12, because, well, shock horror, that's probably not going to happen, sort of thing. So yeah, it's a scary sight that we're sort of coming across these days.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. But so for you, when did you first click on to actually, I want to do this as a profession, or I want to take this seriously?
I was, I guess, ironically, actually quite young. But I guess for me, though, I didn't say I wanted to be a White Fern or a black stick. I just wanted to play sport for New Zealand. I didn't actually care what sport it was. And for a long time there, I actually wanted to be an All Black, which probably didn't quite realise that that's the men's rugby team. But that was certainly my goal growing up, even though I never played rugby until recently. But yeah, for me, I wanted to be a professional sports person, and I didn't care what sport that was. I think, I guess the longer my school career went on, the more I think I was more suited to being an athlete than sitting behind a desk. But I think the great thing in that, though, is I was always encouraged academically to attend school and try my hardest and to get qualifications, particularly when I left high school. So I think we've been really lucky in the female cricket space that so many of the current, my generation of player, I guess, have had to have another, career outside of their sporting career, which I think it's great for that balanced perspective.
Yeah, and while you were at school, so around the age of 15, you got hit with a pretty hard hurdle straight up in being diagnosed with diabetes. How did that impact you at that time? Because that can be quite significant and can affect you on a performance and athletic point of view. What was that experience like?
Yeah, I think the word that probably sums that whole time up is shock. Completely out of the blue. I mean, I've got an uncle that's type 1 diabetic, but it's one of those things where you never expect it to happen to you, sort of thing. So I guess I had a lot of the classic symptoms for probably, a month, 6 weeks leading into when I was diagnosed. And I still remember the day clear as anything going into the GP, because as I said, it sort of took a couple of weeks. I was going to the bathroom lots. I was eating heaps. I was going, drinking lots of water, sleeping lots, which I guess my mum sort of passed off as, you're a teenager, you're growing, you're playing lots of sports, that's sort of normal. But it was when I walked into class one day and I couldn't see the whiteboard very well. I was like, oh, no, that's, I'm usually trying to find excuses to get out of class, but that was probably a stretch too far, and head down to the local GP, the doctor, and yeah, pretty much within 10 minutes, they're like, look, we think you've got diabetes. We need to get you into hospital as soon as we can. And I remember walking out of that appointment with my mum. We both sat in the car and we just bawled our eyes out, absolutely just lost it. Just the shock, the overwhelming sense of what's going on? I mean, we didn't really know much about it, where it came from, what my life was going to look like, I guess, with diabetes. But, I've got to thank my mum that, after our wee crying episode there in the car, she said, right, that's it. We've got to get on with it now. We'll deal with it. We're all here to support you. We're going to get on the front foot, and this isn't going to stop you from doing anything. Come on, right, let's go. And almost from that point on, it was like, okay, right, well, let's just get stuck in. And I was really lucky, I guess, fast forward a little bit, that I had a really good team when I first got diagnosed, when I got to hospital. The doctors, the nurses, the educators were all fantastic. And I actually had a underage representative hockey tournament, I think it was about 2 weeks after I was diagnosed. And me here, the first thought was, I'm never going to play sport again, because dramatic, I think the world's going to end because I've got diabetes now. But, with their help and support, I went to that tournament, and I was ringing the doctor up at 6 a.m. every morning, talking through, what my sugar levels were doing, how much I needed to inject, what exercise I had coming up, and almost getting back on the horse that quickly really helped me, I guess, just to get back on with life. And yeah, I just haven't really looked back from then.
Wow, and it's pretty cool to have your mum with you. Firstly, it's hard on her, but then to be able to pick you up and get on with it, and that sort of perspective, I suppose, in that you think, I suppose, leading into that 2-week hockey tournament, it's probably all about hockey, and then you get hit with this, and it's like, hang on, got to look after my life here. And that sense of perspective, it's something that really hit me about you when you came to Perth, and we played a couple of games together. I didn't spend a huge amount of time with each other, but I think it's from an external perspective anyway, it seems like it's a real strength of yours. And moving forward into juggling both hockey and cricket, did you find yourself getting back stuck into I've got to do all this stuff, I've got to train hard, sport is life and my performance is life? Or were you able to maintain that perspective throughout the rest of your career?
Yeah, I think, again, I don't really know where it came from. I was really fortunate with the support I had from mum and dad. One of the big things we learned early on, and this is, I'm talking 11, 12, 13, was around communication and being as open as we can with whoever's involved, because I was playing so many different sports, and I was involved with so many different coaches and teams and managers and whatever else. And if I was to do every training that was required for every different team, whether it was school, club, representative, national, I wouldn't have had time to sleep pretty much to try and fit it all in. So very early on, I learned, and with mum and dad, was around this open communication, getting everyone in the room together, or, on email, on phone, and saying, look, this is what my week looks like. I'm already doing 3 gyms, so I don't need to do another gym for hockey. And I've got this running session, so I don't need to do another running session there. I'm still getting everything I need to for whatever sport, whatever season I was in. And that really helped. I think coaches and sports and teams probably respected me for that they knew where they stood. And at the end of the day, if I'm absolutely cooked and injured or whatever, I'm not going to be any help to anyone. So me looking after myself and making sure I'm doing what I need to be ready for whatever sport or code it is, was going to be an advantage. So I think that certainly helped, and it sort of gave me a sense of control that, absolutely, I wanted to please everyone. I think everyone has that element, don't they, that they don't want to let anyone down. But, I'm a hell of a lot more helpful if I'm playing the game rather than sitting on the sideline not doing much. So, I think that was a huge part. And I think, if anything from this podcast, for young athletes out there, it would be to over-communicate with what your plans are, and get people on board with your plan, because you're the most important person as the athlete at the end of the day. So, that's certainly a big one for me.
Yeah, and that need to kind of please everyone, I guess it's pretty tough when you're playing 2 sports at the very top level. But in 2012, you finally made a bit of a decision to chase an Olympic dream, and give up cricket to play hockey for the Black Sticks. Yet you didn't quite make the team and missed out on that trip. How was that experience, firstly, making the decision to give up cricket, but then doing all the training and missing out at one of the final hurdles?
Yeah, that was as disappointing as it was to miss out on that final squad, I have no regrets whatsoever about the decision I made. And it was probably a couple of years before that I made my debut with Black Six in 2009, I think it was. So I juggled hockey and cricket for probably close to 2 years. And I know the hockey coach was sort of keep having a crack at me saying, look, you need to give up the cricket because you just keep falling behind. You catch up and then you go back to cricket and the rest of the team sort of jumps ahead. So I made the call, which it was a really hard decision for me because I'd always played cricket. I found myself, when I did focus on the hockey, I found myself sort of lurking around cricket fields at summer, which is a little bit embarrassing. I'm sort of weirdo in the corner waiting for the ball to be hit towards me and I could run and go and pick it up and throw it back. But I knew at that time that was the decision that needed to be made to give myself the best chance of trying to crack that Olympic side. It was awesome. I mean, that environment, I guess, particularly in 2012 when we were centralised up in Auckland and training together for, I think it was close to 4 or 5 months, every day, it certainly showed me what it means to be a professional athlete and what's required to reach the Olympics, not even to compete at the Olympics, just to even get there. So it certainly taught me a lot about me as an athlete as well and how hard you need to push yourself and being part of the team. And yeah, look, I still remember the conversation with the coach. Literally said to me, look, it came down to you and another player and I flipped a coin and it didn't go your way. So
Wow.
I'm not too sure how you can take it, to be fair, but you know what I mean? Like at the time, absolutely, I was gutted. I mean, you almost do. You give up your life, you sacrifice a lot, but I was really fortunate. Literally after that phone call, maybe within a couple of weeks, I had a phone call from New Zealand Cricket asking me if I was available for, I think it was the World Cup in Sri Lanka, actually. So I'd say not more than a couple of months later, I'd sort of ditched hockey and jumped back to cricket, which was a nice distraction, I think.
How did you find the difference in the culture in terms of training and work ethic? Because I know in WA we're pretty lucky to have the AIS base for hockey, and having to do a bit of work with them in the S&C department. I've never seen athletes train so hard. It's unbelievable. And these hockey athletes, you look at their actual numbers, they're the fittest ball sport athletes in the world. And then you flip across to cricket, female side, was not professional at all back then. And even now, we're nowhere near training as hard as these guys do, but we're getting paid double, if not more. Do you think that experience led you to becoming a better cricketer down the track?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And as well, the word you used before around perspective, I think hockey, you pretty much got paid nothing. So you're literally doing it for the love of the game and for wanting to represent your country at the pinnacle event. So it certainly did teach me a lot around work ethic and drive and commitment because, you're literally training your ass off day in, day out to just even try and make the team. So it was a little bit eye-opening, I guess, the difference between hockey and cricket and the environments. And it's hard because they are such different sports, but I think cricket's certainly making a shift to seeing, the fitter you are, stronger you are, it's going to help you with performance on the park. But yeah, I couldn't agree more. Hockey athletes are absolute freaks. Like, I was certainly at my fittest when I was playing hockey, and there's an element to cricket where it is quite skill based, and it's quite unique in that regard. But I just think that some of the training sessions, it actually makes me almost want to vomit thinking about some of the sessions you had to do. But that was just part of it. It was what you had to do to be at that level.
How do you think you balance sort of professionalism versus perfectionism issue? So if you've got that continual push where, say in hockey, they're training really hard, cricket's starting to get there, and we're probably training really hard in a skill element rather than a fitness. But then there's that line that crosses into, am I pushing too hard to be perfect? And is that having an impact on one, my mental health, and two, performances on the field, because you think you're always searching for the next thing and you're not quite content and happy with where you are at that moment for that game?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it's probably something I've only really clicked onto, I reckon, the last couple of years. I think as a new player into an environment, as a young player in particular, is you want to please and you want to, like, I know for me, you wanted to be like someone else, you want to emulate the best person in the world, whoever it was at the time. I think now, it's a funny one, isn't it? I was chatting with someone actually recently around hindsight, I guess. And I was like, geez, I wish I knew now what I do 10, 15 years ago as a youngster, but I know my journey and what I've been through has helped me to become the player I am now. And I'm not sure if I had have known that, would I've gone down a different path. And that perfectionism is such a hard thing, especially, I guess, the higher up you go, as the expectation is on your performance, and that's what you're judged on, that's what money's worth, that's what your contract's worth. So it is hard because it is your reality, but it's that sense of, I guess for me, it's that process and, that trust and faith in what you're doing is right for you. But geez, yeah, it's a tough one. I think all athletes have a sense of perfectionism. It's like you say, they're making sure that it doesn't cross a line where it's to the detriment of not only your physical performance, but your mental health as well.
I just want to unpack that. You said it's probably only now that you've clicked onto how to actually balance that. Early in your career, did you find that really difficult? And what sort of thought processes led to you maybe going down the path of perfectionism versus professionalism?
Oh, I honestly think I was just young. Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't know who I was. I wasn't comfortable in my own skin. I was trying to please people. I, made some pretty crappy decisions, as we all do, and that's life, isn't it? I guess it's how you learn from it and what you do to grow from it. But yeah, it is. You do. Any new environment, you want to make the bosses happy. You want to make your coaches happy. You want to make your senior players happy. And if that means, doing whatever, then you do it in a sense. But yeah, I guess, like I said, now the last couple of years, it's being happy with who I am as a person has certainly helped. So not even on the cricket field, away from cricket, knowing myself better and being comfortable with that has had such a big impact on how I perform on the park. And in the outcome, I'm definitely not as focused on. I think definitely as a youngster, you're so worried that, oh no, am I going to score a 50 today? I need to take a couple of wickets, whatever else, rather than focusing on all the training that you've done, all the hard work you've put in, and trusting in that process. It almost takes the pressure off, because, geez, pressure can be a massive killer, eh? It can weigh you down, it can restrict you, it can limit your style, which, I just think that's why you get picked in teams. It's for your own unique ability, and if you're off trying to be someone else or suppressing it, of course you're going to struggle to perform.
Yeah, and where do you tend to go to under pressure? Firstly, from a point of view, you're big hitter. Your strengths are being able to hit the ball hard. But if you've not come off for a few games in a row, how do you deal with actually sticking to your strengths as opposed to, oh, maybe I should be a bit safe and do something else that's not quite Sophie?
Yeah, it's another great question. I think it's probably really interesting. A great example for me is the game against the Stars last year, where most people probably remember it for the ending, I guess, where I sort of managed to hit five sixes off the last over, I think it was. But the whole innings leading into that, I felt absolutely crap. Like, I was trying to almost stand on my stumps. I was that frustrated and getting really wound up that I wasn't finding the middle of the bat. The harder I tried, the worse it got, in a sense. And I guess that's where I've probably learnt the last couple of years, just to trust and to guts it out, and to, being there, it'll come through eventually. And that was probably a rather extreme example, but it is, for me, it's just trusting that process. And I think particularly in cricket, I mean, I don't know how many times I've heard batters that are struggling for form, and they go and hit another 100, 200, 300 balls trying to find something new. And it's like, well, you haven't found it in the pre-season, winter months, or wherever in the training ground. I don't think you're going to find it with an extra 50 throwdowns or, anything else. I do. Our coach here at New Zealand, actually, he made himself laugh a lot, actually, earlier this year at the World Cup, because there's a few players like that get a bit twitchy if they can't have a hit before a game, or, can't have a good hit the day before a game. And he said, "No, I'm not letting you do it." And some of these players were losing their marbles, saying, "Oh, I've got to hit, it's routine, it's whatever else." So, like, what's one hit going to make a difference. Do you know what I mean? You're a great player. You're not going to lose that overnight. You're not going to lose it. What happens if it rains and we can't train? Are you saying then that you're going to lose all that ability overnight? And it was another great example of that perspective, wasn't it? That, you know, you're not going to lose things overnight or lose it from not hitting balls. So yeah, for me it is. It's about knowing yourself and what works for you, to, yeah, I guess what you go to under pressure.
Yeah, it's really interesting, that element of control and the need to control everything that you do prior to then give yourself the best chance to perform is a really great method. But I think sometimes that strength can become a weakness, or that need to control just tips slightly over the edge. And that's something we've seen a lot here in Vic, because we've had a horrendous pre-season. We can sometimes train twice a week, sometimes it's 3 times a week. It's raining at the moment. We've hit on turf. It's September. We've hit on turf 3 or 4 times this month, basically. We're not going to get a look in at a centre wicket practice. I think that's something that a lot of people have learned. Myself, I'm definitely one of those people that wants to hit a million balls, but it teaches you that actually, like, I know how to play cricket. Why do I play cricket? I play cricket because it's fun. I've been playing for 15 years now. I think I know how to hit a ball and bowl a ball, and it's almost scary to just trust. Like, it's actually scary to actually trust yourself.
Yeah.
And that's something that, I suppose, silver lining of something like a pandemic, it forces you to be able to do that. And that's probably a life skill in itself. And I know we've actually done a few yoga sessions together out at Twisting Peacock in Perth.
Yeah.
And I've heard you say that you do yoga more so for your mind than your body. Can you unpack that one a little bit as well?
Yeah, look, again, this is probably my second piece of advice that I'd give to any young person coming through, is to get into yoga as quickly as possible. I wish I had started when I was a teenager, eh? But yeah, for me, mentally, I guess it probably stemmed from when I went through a little bit of a rough patch and dealing with depression, probably about 3 or 4 years ago now. And yoga was, I guess, a strategy suggested to me, I guess, just to stay present and to stay in the moment and to think about just my breathing. And at the time, I wasn't too keen on it, but the more and more I did it, the more I really enjoyed that opportunity to just sit and be with my emotions and sit with my thoughts. And it's funny when I hear people talk now about yoga, or that are new to yoga. Oh, well, I'm not very flexible, and I can't be still, and I can't, just sit there and think about my breathing. I'm like, sometimes I can't either. And I think that's the beautiful thing about yoga is you practice yoga just like you practice cricket. No one's expecting you to be an expert or a master yogi. It's practicing yoga. And I always get a bit of a reality check when I go into yoga classes wherever I am, and there's a 80-year-old lady and a guy with a beer guts, and here they are bending in half more than I can. And I think it's such a great leveler that you can have all these ideas and assumptions about people, but just them turning up on the mat, for me, it's just a really nice place to go and sit and be still, particularly in the world, well, the current environment that we're in. It's just nice to have that time to be still. And for me, it certainly has helped translate over into the middle as well. If there's times where I'm starting to get flustered or get a bit panicky or a bit anxious, which I think cricketers often get a little bit twitchy, just to literally think about your breath, think about your breathing. And it does seem so simple, but those sort of grounding techniques are relevant whether you play sport, whether you're in a big meeting, at work, at school. I just think there's so many great things that yoga can translate to in all aspects of life.
Unreal. And you mentioned dealing with depression about 4 years ago. And then if we fast forward to now, or your last year or two, you've been in unbelievable form with the bat. You also seem very content with where you are, your captaincy, your leadership, and just who you are off the field. I can't imagine that's what you were going through when you're dealing with depression. How do you think, firstly, dealing with depression helped you to get to where you are now? And also, what sort of tools do you still use today to keep that ticking along really well?
Yeah, it's funny. I guess yeah, I guess dealing with depression, and it's one of those things that you're never cured of, you're never fixed, you never, you're never going to see it again. And for me, before that time, I probably was of the mindset and mentality. I didn't fully grasp it and I didn't understand it. I absolutely, had empathy for people that, were battling with a mental health, whether it was depression or anxiety. But for me, when people say, oh, I can't get out of bed, I don't have the motivation, I'm just so down. I couldn't understand that. I couldn't comprehend that until I found myself. I was one of those people where I did not want to get out of bed and I did not want to see anyone. And going into big crowds made me anxious, and it sort of all clicked for me. So at the time, it was hard, it was shit, it was tough, and it wasn't nice. Do you know what I mean? But coming through the other side, and that's probably the really important message, is that there is another side, and you will get through it. It might take a couple of months, it might take a couple of years, it might take longer, but there is always another end to it. And for me, the tools and strategies I learned through that time, I guess I was really fortunate. I was able to see a couple of different psychologists and counsellors, just being able to talk through it. Lots of tears, lots of tissues, lots of snot running out my nose because I was a blubbering mess. I was using medication as well to help me through that time. And like I said earlier, the yoga became a really important aspect of my, I guess, recovery. The cricket was a really interesting one for me because I guess in the lowest parts of my depression, I didn't want to have anything to do with cricket. I couldn't stand the sight of it. I didn't want to train. I didn't want to watch it. I don't want to talk about it. The idea of even playing cricket again, I couldn't imagine anything worse, which for someone who was a professional cricketer was pretty tough. And I didn't really know how I was ever going to get back playing again. And again, like I said, I was really fortunate. I had some great support and professional help to, work my way back into that environment. And it did take a lot of time. I'm talking close to 12, 18 months till I felt comfortable back in that space again. But like, I remember I missed a tour, and that was probably one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make, was missing a New Zealand tour because of my mental health. And I remember at the time, I just wanted someone to make the decision for me because I couldn't make it. I felt like I was letting people down, whatever I chose, whether I went or whether I didn't. But I'm really glad I decided not to go in the end, because I was in no mental space, headspace to be playing international cricket. And yeah, the steps back to getting into that New Zealand environment again were really tough. I remember it would have been one of the first series I came back, and we were playing out at Lincoln in Christchurch in New Zealand, and we stay pretty much at the ground, and it's a 2-minute walk from your accommodation to the ground. And I remember waking up that morning, and it's really like a black cloud sort of hangs over you. And I thought, oh, come on, let's give it the crack day of the game. So I remember walking over full of anxiety, and sensing a panic attack was almost brewing, and just trying to work through those strategies of breathing. And let's just, you've done this before, let's just try, what would you normally do before all of this? And so, okay, all right, well, I'll do what any cricketer does. I'll walk out into the middle and I'll have a look at the pitch and pretend I know what the pitch is going to play like. And I remember getting to the middle and I just broke down in tears, just overwhelmed with emotion, sadness. And luckily at the time, the coach sort of came over and obviously knew sort of what was going on, and sort of said, look, don't worry about playing. Like, there's no rush. You don't need to do this. We can try again another day. And I remember literally just walking off the field and going straight back. And I actually slept through, I reckon, 3/4 of that game. It was a 50 over game too.
Yeah.
I was absolutely exhausted from that, 200-metre walk to the middle of the wicket and back again. I was absolutely cooked, because the emotion, the anxiety, everything that came with that, it was probably only 20 minutes, but I was cooked after that. And it was a lot of instances like that, whether it was during games, whether it was at trainings, whether it was, even at the gym. There were a lot of, I guess, stumbling blocks on my return to playing. It's not, yeah, sweet, you're all good, you can jump straight back into it. So yeah, it certainly was a long process. And there's times now where I still feel similar emotions, where I'll get really anxious, or I'll feel like I'm starting to get a panic attack. My chest will tighten up, my breathing will go. And I guess going back to those tools that I learned with the breathing, staying centered, talking to people, are all really valuable things now that I know I can call on, and know that I'll be okay and can work through it, which I guess back then I didn't know, and I couldn't see how I was going to get through it.
That's a really cool story in terms of the lessons learned, but also the tools that you're still using it now. So it's not like you get to this place where everything's fine and dandy and we're all happy and life's great. It's a continual battle in terms of managing it. And what is you say you're breathing, do you have like a formal meditation practice, or is that within your yoga, or is it just kind of when you need it? What does that look like?
Yeah, it can be pretty varied, to be honest. I've got a couple of different apps that I can rotate through. My favourite one's Insight Timer, which is pretty much just a massive, a catalogue of different meditations, which, I mean, I use a meditation every night before I go to sleep. Throughout the day, if I'm feeling like I just need to chill out, unwind or whatever, being able to chuck one on. Even simple things like during the middle of a game, it can be just the fact of counting my breath up to 10 and counting back down again. It's just something to take my mind off whatever it's thinking about, usually, blowing things out of proportion or whatever. So it can be as simple as, literally counting to 10 and back down again, can have, a really calming effect.
Well, that's awesome. And did you find that any particular leaders around you, whether it was coaches, fellow teammates, friends, family, had a really good impact on you in kind of coming out of that depressive period?
Look, I think I was really fortunate, I guess, when I did come back into the New Zealand environment. And I mean, it was really tough telling people about it, and not, I guess, we didn't make a pledge to the team about what was going on and things like that, but we sort of had a small group of players which I could trust and talk to, and it was almost like a small group for me that they'd check on me daily, especially in those early days, just seeing how I was going. If I needed a little bit of help or support getting out of bed that day, if they could come for breakfast. And it was just small things which really meant a lot to me, and having them there was really important. Family as well. Certainly just talking about it is a massive help. And I think particularly in the athlete space and sports, we need to talk about it more, because I think it's so prevalent, not just in society, but particularly with athletes. And it's almost as though people think we're immune because, for whatever reason, I don't really know what the reason is, but I think the more we can get it out there and discuss it, because that was one of the things for me, is you feel like you're really alone in what you're feeling and what you're going through. So being able to share it, and that was one of the things I was so surprised at, was how many people had similar thoughts or had been through similar things, and having that shared, I guess, experience, it almost lessen the burden a little bit.
And has that shaped the basis of your leadership and captaincy now in terms of relationships, communication? They seem like reoccurring themes, right from when you're talking about your family when you got diagnosed with diabetes at a young age.
Yeah, definitely. I think it probably stems back to that word perspective as well for me. And, one of the things we've got here at the White Ferns now, which I'm hugely passionate about, is we've got each of the players and support staff as well to design a poster, and we've called it My Why. And it's pretty much, why do you play? Pretty much. And for me, on my poster, it's family, it's friends, it's my partner, it's a couple of quotes in there, and being able to see that visual representation of, this is why I play. It's because I loved it. I think I've got a photo of me when I'm 6 or 7 with a cricket bat. I'm like, that's why I started playing this game, for just hanging out with mates and enjoying it, the challenge, and just having that perspective. And that's certainly a thing, I guess, with my captaincy and leadership, is understanding that everyone's going to have different motivations to play, and who they're playing for and why they're playing. And you can really knuckle down and understand why people play. I think you get a freedom from that player, because they just, you used that word before, that trust. Becomes a lot easier to trust yourself when you feel comfortable with why you're doing it, what you're doing. So that's certainly been, from what I've learned, I hope to sort of, like you say, pass that through with my leadership.
That's so good. I love it. There's actually a lot of research coming out quite recently around the idea of purpose mindset and that idea of why do you play. And it's asked a lot in, let's say, a lot of media, why do you play cricket? Oh, 'cause it's fun, I have my friends. But actually, why do you play? And those things that you say are the same, but being able to connect with them seems to be the most common link between being able to sustain performance over long periods. So you can be driven from a place of anger, or you want to prove someone wrong, or you want to look good to other people. And say the old Michael Jordan argument, where it is a huge ego driver, but sustained performance comes back to your purpose mindset. And if we can get players, coaches, everyone, the entire team to be able to actually really sit down and think about their why, connect to their why. And I really, really love your idea of having your little poster, especially a little picture of when you were younger up there, because sometimes pictures speak louder than words as well. I really do like that. Do you think you've changed what you value yourself on? Because that kind of relates to purpose, is back, say, early 20s, mid 20s. Have you changed how you value yourself then compared to now?
Oh, 100%. But I think everyone does as you grow older. I guess priorities change and how you see yourself. And like I said earlier, I didn't know who I was when I was younger. And to be fair, I still don't know all parts of me. And that's, I guess, the great journey of life, isn't it? Geez, that sounds deep. Is to learn that and to, I guess, find out those deep, dark parts of yourself that, what happens to you. So, I certainly do think I've changed and hopefully for the better, with that perspective. But, again, it's a really funny one. Like, I do think back and think, oh, well, if I'd have made different decisions, what would I've ended up like now, sort of thing. But it's a great thing to look back and to learn from mistakes made or decisions you did make right, you know what I mean, and where you've ended up. So definitely have changed, have definitely not got any more sense of style or rhythm or singing ability, but hopefully cricket abilities try to improve.
Love it. What do you hope the next generation gets right?
Oh, jeez. Look, I'm not sure if, that's going to be a bit doom and gloom. I'm not sure if the next generation, but I certainly hope the generation afterwards. I really hope they stop comparing themselves to others. I think we've seen with the impact of phones and social media and, just comparing to others is such a killer. Rather than being happy and content with yourself and who you are, I really hope future generations can accept that and embrace the uniqueness that each of us bring to this world. So, fingers crossed it can happen with the next generation, but I guess there's lots to come, hopefully.
Yeah, have you heard of the term FOPO?
FOPO? No.
Yeah, it's a thing. Like, so there's FOMO, which is fear of missing out. FOPO is fear of other people's opinions. And it's actually becoming, seriously, I laughed like that when I first heard it. It's becoming, it's actually starting to get into research now. And the number one fear in the adolescent age group is FOPO, which is fear of other opinions. You can talk about anything, financial stress, relationships, spiders, whatever it is you want. But it all comes back to actually, what do others think of me? And it's got a direct correlation with the rise in mental health of athletes, non-athletes, everyone. It's all in school age kids. So you pretty much bang on with that answer. But we'll start to wind up here now. Thank you so much for your time, Soph. It's been pretty cool and really nice to sort of unpack your story a little bit more. We see from the outside point of view, really easy to compare, as we say, and smashing sixes, bowling well, you're a great person, played 2 sports at the international level. It can seem really big on the outside, but everyone has a story. And I suppose that's the purpose of what we're doing here, is to unpack that story and the growth that comes from that. And as much as we can try help the younger generation, I think sometimes life just teaches you these things, like just doing life, as dumb as that sounds. But for our final question is, who is Sophie Devine at her best?
Oh, I think just relaxed and happy, and being present in the moment. I got asked the other day, do I have any goals for this series coming up? And I actually said, I mean, I'm not a massive goal setter anyway, but I sort of went back, I just want to be present and enjoy this current moment, because like we said right at the start, we're in a pretty privileged position to be able to be playing cricket when there's people that still can't get out of their houses. So for me, it is, I'm at my best when I'm present. I'm here.
Love it. And I love that you also are living that day to day by putting in processes of things like meditation, yoga, paying attention to the people around you and their why. And that just comes back to being you at your best every day. So thank you so much for your time. Good luck for the upcoming series. Obviously, usually you want the Aussies to be the dirty Kiwis on the other side of the ditch. But I think cricket's the winner and sport's the winner. So it's fantastic to have a series going ahead. I'm looking forward to our next game of golf and hopefully catching up in the WBBL hub.
Sounds great. Thanks a lot for your time, Bo. You're doing some great things.
No worries. Cheers, Soph. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to continue to be part of the Inside Edge project, hit subscribe or leave a comment below. We're also on all major social media platforms. I look forward to having you along next time.